Good evening. This is a breaking news update from the Middle East. In a significant and unexpected development, Israel has reportedly agreed to a withdrawal line in Gaza, a move that could reshape the dynamics of one of the world's most volatile conflicts. According to U.S. President Donald Trump, Israel has accepted a framework that defines a specific line for troop withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. While the precise details remain under discussion, this marks the first major step toward de-escalation since the latest wave of hostilities began earlier this year. For decades, Gaza has stood at the heart of regional tension, destruction, and humanitarian crisis. The region has witnessed multiple wars, repeated ceasefires, and countless failed peace initiatives. Now, with this reported agreement, the international community is watching closely to see whether this represents a genuine breakthrough toward peace or simply a temporary pause in a cycle of conflict. In tonight's special report, we'll examine how this decision came about, the reactions from world leaders, the skepticism among analysts, and what this could mean for the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. This is the story of the Gaza withdrawal line and the uncertain hope it brings. Earlier today, former U.S. President Donald Trump made a surprising statement during a press briefing in Washington. Standing before a group of reporters, he declared that Israel had agreed to establish what he called a Gaza withdrawal line, a demarcation that would mark the areas from which Israeli troops are set to pull back. Trump described the agreement as a historic step toward stability, though his remarks left many questions unanswered. He emphasized that this development came after long and intense discussions between Israeli and American officials, and that great progress had been made in the effort to reduce violence in Gaza. The announcement caught much of the world off guard. Neither Israel's Prime Minister's office nor the Israeli Defense Forces released an immediate statement to confirm the news, fueling speculation about the exact nature of Trump's claim. However, several diplomatic sources in both Washington and Jerusalem have hinted that talks over a phased withdrawal plan have been underway for several weeks. Trump, who has remained vocal about Middle East policy even after leaving office, presented the development as a validation of his past diplomatic efforts, particularly the Abraham Accords, which normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations during his presidency. This shows that the peace framework we began is still alive, he said. It's not easy, but it's possible. According to Trump, the proposed withdrawal line would be the result of mutual understanding rather than external pressure. He stated that the move is meant to ensure both Israeli security and humanitarian access for civilians in Gaza. The plan reportedly involves the withdrawal of Israeli forces from certain strategic zones while maintaining oversight through surveillance and coordinated checkpoints. While the former president spoke with confidence, his statement has raised significant debate among analysts and diplomats. Some view it as an attempt to position himself back in the center of international attention amid rising tensions in the region. Others see it as a genuine indication that Israel and the U.S. are working behind the scenes to prevent a wider escalation. Inside the U.S., reactions were divided. Supporters of Trump hailed the statement as proof of his continued influence in global affairs. Critics, however, questioned the credibility of the claim, noting that no official Israeli spokesperson has yet verified the existence of such an agreement. What's clear is that Trump's words have reignited global discussion about the long-stalled peace process in the Middle East. Whether the Gaza withdrawal line is an imminent reality or a political maneuver remains uncertain, but it has once again placed the spotlight on the fragile balance between diplomacy and conflict in the region. Although official documents have not yet been released, several diplomatic insiders have begun to shed light on what the so-called Gaza withdrawal line might actually entail. According to early reports, the plan defines a new boundary within the Gaza Strip, separating active Israeli military zones from civilian areas with the goal of reducing direct confrontation and easing humanitarian operations. Sources familiar with the discussions say the proposed withdrawal would occur in stages over several months. In the first phase, Israeli troops would pull back from areas deemed non-essential for security control, particularly around the northern and central districts of Gaza. This move would allow humanitarian convoys, medical teams, and reconstruction agencies to access regions that have been isolated since the last wave of violence. The second phase reportedly involves the gradual transfer of security responsibilities to an international monitoring mission, possibly under the supervision of the United Nations or a coalition of regional partners. The mission would be tasked with overseeing ceasefire compliance, ensuring aid distribution, and maintaining safe zones for civilians. According to one European diplomat, the line would be fluid but clearly defined, meaning that while Israel retains the right to respond to immediate threats, it commits to refraining from offensive operations beyond the designated boundary. This approach aims to create what negotiators call a de-escalation corridor, a buffer area where neither side engages in military activity. Another crucial component of the agreement, insiders say, is the establishment of humanitarian coordination checkpoints. These crossings would be jointly operated by international observers and local authorities to regulate the movement of goods, food, and medical supplies. The checkpoints are expected to function under strict oversight to prevent smuggling of weapons while ensuring that essential aid reaches civilians in need. Financially, the plan appears to include a reconstruction framework backed by several Gulf nations and Western donors. Early estimates suggest that billions of dollars in aid could flow into Gaza if the ceasefire holds and the withdrawal line remains stable. Infrastructure rebuilding, especially water systems, electricity grids, and hospitals, is expected to be prioritized. Still, many questions remain. Who exactly will enforce the new boundaries? What guarantees exist to prevent future violations? And perhaps most importantly, how will this arrangement affect the political balance between Israel and Palestinian factions, including Hamas, which continues to wield significant power inside Gaza? Israeli security officials have reportedly expressed concerns about maintaining control over border crossings and intelligence operations. For them, a premature withdrawal without solid guarantees could risk creating a power vacuum that militant groups might exploit. For now, the so-called Gaza withdrawal line exists more as a diplomatic concept than a signed treaty, but its potential implications are far-reaching. If implemented effectively, it could ease humanitarian suffering and open the door to renewed dialogue. If it fails, it might instead deepen mistrust and fuel further instability, not only in Gaza, but across the broader Middle East. The announcement that Israel may have agreed to a Gaza withdrawal line has triggered an immediate wave of global responses, some hopeful, others deeply skeptical. Across the world, governments and international organizations have been quick to issue cautious statements reflecting both relief at the potential for calm and doubt about its durability. In Washington, U.S. officials framed the development as a promising but fragile step. A spokesperson for the White House said that any movement toward de-escalation is welcome, but emphasized that lasting peace will depend on the actions of both parties on the ground. The State Department confirmed that American diplomats are in constant communication with their Israeli counterparts and regional mediators to clarify the details of the plan. European leaders echoed similar sentiments. The European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs described the reported withdrawal line as a constructive gesture that could pave the way for humanitarian access. However, she also noted that, without a verified and enforceable mechanism, words alone will not stop the violence. In France, President Emmanuel Macron urged both sides to turn this opportunity into a real foundation for peace, while Germany called for the United Nations to take a leading role in monitoring any future arrangement. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, reactions were measured but attentive. The Secretary General's office released a statement urging restraint and welcoming any initiative that reduces civilian suffering. The UN Humanitarian Affairs Division announced that it was preparing contingency plans to scale up aid delivery if access routes within Gaza reopen. Meanwhile, several Security Council members, including Russia and China, have called for a formal briefing to assess the credibility of Trump's announcement and Israel's actual commitment. In the Arab world, reactions were mixed and often divided along political lines. Egypt, which has long acted as a mediator between Israel and Palestinian groups, cautiously welcomed the potential for reduced hostilities, but stressed that true peace cannot exist without addressing the root causes of the conflict. Saudi Arabia and Jordan issued statements emphasizing the need for a broader peace framework, one that includes recognition of Palestinian statehood. In contrast, Iranian officials dismissed the announcement as a media illusion, accusing both Washington and Tel Aviv of trying to manipulate global opinion. Iranian state media claimed that the so-called withdrawal line was a cover for continued occupation under a new name. From the Palestinian side, the response was unsurprisingly critical. Hamas officials in Gaza rejected the idea of any unilateral arrangement determined without Palestinian consultation. A spokesperson stated that no foreign power has the right to define borders or withdrawal lines on our land. The Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, meanwhile, expressed cautious interest but demanded that any agreement be made through formal diplomatic channels involving both parties. International analysts have described the situation as a moment of both opportunity and uncertainty. Some view it as a genuine chance to prevent another spiral of violence, while others warn that without transparency and accountability, it may collapse before implementation even begins. In capitals across the globe, the sentiment seems to converge on one point. This development, real or symbolic, has reopened the world's attention to Gaza, a place that for too long has been defined by conflict, blockade, and despair. Whether this newfound focus will lead to peace or more disillusionment remains to be seen. Despite the initial wave of optimism, skepticism has quickly surfaced. From political analysts, security experts, and even former officials within Israel and the United States. Many argue that the announcement, while headline-grabbing, lacks the substance and verification necessary to be considered a real policy shift. Experts point out that no official documentation, signed agreement, or joint statement has been released to confirm the supposed withdrawal line. Instead, the information relies heavily on remarks attributed to President Trump and anonymous sources within U.S. intelligence. This ambiguity has raised serious questions about whether the announcement reflects a genuine diplomatic achievement or merely a strategic maneuver in the media landscape. Dr. Leah Cohen, a senior fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv, told reporters that, without evidence of coordination between the Israeli Defense Forces and the government, it's impossible to confirm that a new withdrawal line even exists. She added that Israel has not shown any visible redeployment of troops or change in its operational stance near Gaza. Similarly, Palestinian observers have voiced doubts about the sincerity of the move. Many recall previous instances where statements of withdrawal were followed by renewed military activity. According to Palestinian political analyst Omar Shaheen, every time the word withdrawal is used, it comes with conditions that effectively maintain control, whether through checkpoints, restricted zones, or airspace dominance. In Washington, critics have raised concerns about the political timing of the announcement. Some believe it may be designed to create a sense of diplomatic success during a period of domestic pressure. Former State Department official Rebecca Lawson commented, "It's not unusual for leaders to announce breakthroughs that are still in negotiation stages. The question is whether this one will hold up under scrutiny." Within Israel itself, skepticism also runs high. Opposition politicians and several retired military officers have questioned the feasibility of any Gaza withdrawal plan without a clear framework for security guarantees. Former IDF General Amos Gilad said in an interview, "If Israel truly intends to establish a new boundary, that decision must be backed by parliament, defense command, and coordination with allies." We've seen no sign of that, yet international media outlets have also adopted a cautious tone. The BBC noted that the details remain murky, while Reuters and Al Jazeera both described the situation as fluid and unverified. The New York Times highlighted that no Israeli official has publicly confirmed the existence of a new border demarcation. Adding to the uncertainty is the complete silence from key Israeli government figures. Prime Minister's office, the Defense Ministry, and the Foreign Affairs Ministry have all declined to comment, citing ongoing assessments. This lack of transparency fuels suspicion that the supposed deal may not yet exist in any formal capacity. Observers also question whether the announcement was coordinated with Israel's internal security establishment, particularly the Shin Bet in the IDF Southern Command, both of which play crucial roles in Gaza policy. Any unilateral statement made without their operational backing, experts warn, risks being symbolic at best and destabilizing at worst. Furthermore, regional analysts have pointed out the complex interplay of politics, perception, and propaganda surrounding the story. Professor Ahmed Karim from the University of Amman remarked, "The information war is as active as the real one. Announcements like this often serve as tools to influence markets, test reactions, or shift focus away from domestic controversies." Social media has amplified the confusion. Within hours of the announcement, hashtags such as hashtag Gaza withdrawal and hashtag Trump Israel line trended globally, flooded with conflicting reports, memes, and conspiracy theories. Fact-checkers from major organizations have since urged the public to treat the claims with caution until verifiable details emerge. Ultimately, what stands out is not clarity, but contradiction. On one side, it's statements of progress and peace. On the other, silence and denial. For many observers, the pattern feels familiar. A cycle of announcements, denials, and shattered expectations that has repeated for decades in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As one European diplomat summed it up privately, "We've learned to wait for the actions, not the words." To understand the weight of this announcement and why it has been met with such deep skepticism, it's essential to look back at history. The idea of an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza is not new. In fact, it is one of the most recurring and controversial themes in the region's modern political history. The first major precedent dates back to 2005, when then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon launched what was officially called the Gaza Disengagement Plan. At the time, Israel unilaterally evacuated all of its settlements and military installations inside the Gaza Strip, withdrawing roughly 8,000 settlers and dismantling 21 settlements. The move was seen by many as a bold step toward de-escalation, a painful but necessary separation designed to reduce daily friction and create space for a future Palestinian state. However, the optimism of 2005 quickly faded. Within months, internal Palestinian divisions deepened, and in 2007, Hamas took control of Gaza following violent clashes with Fatah. Israel responded with a strict blockade, citing security concerns and rocket fire from Gaza. Since then, the notion of withdrawal has been redefined, not as physical disengagement, but as an ongoing struggle over control, access, and legitimacy. Another major moment came in 2014, during the conflict known as Operation Protective Edge. Israel carried out extensive military operations inside Gaza after a surge in rocket attacks. While the fighting eventually subsided under a ceasefire brokered by Egypt, the destruction left behind reinforced skepticism about any claims of long-term withdrawal or peace. As one analyst put it then, "Every war ends with a truce that looks temporary, and every withdrawal seems to be followed by another return." In 2021, renewed violence erupted again. After weeks of unrest in Jerusalem, Hamas fired thousands of rockets into Israel, prompting heavy airstrikes and another round of devastation. Despite international calls for de-escalation, the cycle repeated ceasefire, tension, and renewed hostility. By that point, many observers began to question whether withdrawal had any practical meaning at all, when the airspace, maritime access, and borders remained under Israeli control. This historical pattern casts a long shadow over the current announcement. Analysts point out that every past attempt at disengagement has been partial, conditional, or short-lived, often collapsing under the pressure of security concerns, political rivalries, or mutual distrust. Comparing the present moment to 2005, the differences are stark. Sharon's disengagement, for all its controversy, involved clear, documented actions. Settlers were physically removed, bases were dismantled, and international observers were present. Today, however, no such verifiable process has been confirmed. The withdrawal line remains theoretical, a statement without maps, timelines, or oversight. Furthermore, Israel's domestic politics have evolved dramatically since 2005. Coalition governments are fragile, divided between factions with radically different visions for Gaza and the West Bank. Some argue for renewed engagement. Others insist on maintaining full security control. This polarization makes any significant shift in Gaza policy even more complicated to implement. On the Palestinian side, divisions persist as well. Hamas continues to govern Gaza, while the Palestinian Authority administers parts of the West Bank. Efforts at reconciliation have repeatedly failed, leaving no unified counterpart for Israel to negotiate with, a fundamental obstacle to any meaningful peace framework. Internationally, too, the context has changed. In 2005, global attention was heavily focused on the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Today, the geopolitical landscape is dominated by new conflicts, shifting alliances, and competing crises. The Gaza issue, while still symbolic, no longer commands the same sustained diplomatic momentum it once did. For these reasons, historians and policymakers alike caution against treating the current announcement as a turning point, at least not yet. As Dr. Jonathan Reed of the London School of Economics observes, every time we hear the word withdrawal, we should ask, withdrawal from what, to where, and for how long? In short, this moment, though dramatic, fits within a long continuum of announcements, reversals, and contested narratives. Until concrete evidence emerges, the Gaza withdrawal line remains part of an unresolved story, one that has been written, erased, and rewritten many times before. Beyond politics, strategy, and diplomacy, there lies the human cost. For the people living in Gaza, every new headline about withdrawal or ceasefire feels painfully familiar. It is a story they have heard many times before, often followed by disappointment, destruction, or silence. Over the past decades, Gaza has become one of the most densely populated and impoverished regions on Earth. Nearly 2 million Palestinians live in an area just 40 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide, an area smaller than most major cities. More than half of its population are children under the age of 18. For them, conflict is not a memory, it is daily life. The humanitarian situation remains dire. According to the United Nations, over 80% of Gaza's residents rely on international aid for food, water, and medical supplies. Electricity is available for only a few hours a day, and clean water is a daily struggle. Hospitals are under-equipped, and doctors often perform surgeries without adequate anesthesia or power. In the streets of Gaza City, vendors try to sell what little produce they have left. Children play soccer among the ruins of bombed-out buildings. Families crowd into small apartments shared between multiple households. Each night, the distant hum of drones serves as a reminder that peace, if it exists, is fragile and conditional. For many civilians, the recent announcement of a withdrawal line sparks not hope, but confusion. What does it actually mean for them? Will borders open? Will food and medicine move freely? Will families be able to reunite with relatives trapped on the other side? Most residents have learned not to expect too much, too quickly. Fatma, a 32-year-old mother of 3 living near Rafah, told a local reporter, "We hear there might be a change, but we don't know what kind. Every time they say there will be peace, something else happens." I just want my children to sleep without fear. Aid organizations have expressed similar concerns. The International Committee of the Red Cross has called for clarity and coordination before celebrating any new agreement. Doctors Without Borders warn that humanitarian access is often the first promise made and the first broken. In their words, declarations do not feed children. In Israel, too, the human cost is deeply felt. Communities near the Gaza border live with constant uncertainty. Sirens, rockets, and evacuations have become part of everyday existence. For families in towns like Sderot or Ashkelon, peace is not an abstract concept. It's the hope of sending children to school without running to shelters. One Israeli resident described it simply, "We don't want more land. We just want quiet." The cycle of violence has left both societies traumatized. Psychologists in the region report rising cases of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, not only among soldiers or militants, but among children and ordinary citizens. In many ways, the emotional scars of the conflict have become as lasting as its physical ones. International humanitarian agencies continue to operate under extraordinary conditions. The UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, maintains shelters and food distribution centers, often under threat or shortage. The World Health Organization warns that Gaza's medical system is on the verge of collapse. The World Food Program reports that 1 in 3 families face severe food insecurity. Yet amid the hardship, there are glimmers of resilience. Local volunteers distribute bread baked in makeshift ovens. Teachers continue classes in damaged schools. Artists paint murals calling for peace on walls pockmarked by shrapnel. Even in the darkest corners, humanity refuses to disappear. Still, aid workers caution that true recovery will never come from humanitarian efforts alone. As one UN official put it, you cannot deliver enough food or medicine to end an occupation. Only political will can do that. That truth underscores the fragile intersection between politics and survival. Every policy decision, every speech, every line drawn on a map directly shapes the fate of millions of people who have no voice in the process. As the world debates withdrawal lines and ceasefires, the people of Gaza continue to live one day at a time. For them, the question is not about diplomacy or strategy. It is about whether tomorrow will bring light or darkness, hope or despair. And that is the ultimate measure of any peace, not what leaders declare, but what ordinary lives endure.